Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Welcome back to the Embracing Your Admixture series. In this episode, I'm going to talk about how to embrace your Latin American background, how to embrace that part of your admixture. When I do this series, there's not a certain percentage that I'm tying to the admixture because the real point of my entire channel is to embrace all of yourself, however much you feel comfortable with it. Some people, they like to say, hey, I'm 50% black, so 50% of the time I'm going to embrace blackness. I'm 25% white, so 25% of the time I'm going to engage in that culture. And then I'm 25% Asian, so 25% of the time I'll embrace that culture. I've heard of some people doing it that way. You can do it that way if you want. You can embrace your different cultures in a way that directly correlates to how much of that admixture you have, or you could not do that because I've met plenty of mixed people who have majority non-black ancestry, but they solely identify as black. They solely embrace blackness and that culture. So just like how it can be true with white passing black people or white passing mixed people who only want to embrace their blackness, the same can be true with black passing mixed people who feel more comfortable identifying with maybe a non-black part of their culture or a non-black part of their ethnic background. There is no right or wrong way to do it, so you can decide exactly how you want to do it. And by the way, when it comes to having a fluid identity, it's totally normal to feel different every single day. So I've talked about this before, depending on what part of the United States I'm in, I may feel more connected to being Latin American. And then maybe if I'm in an all black environment, I feel more connected to my blackness. And then if I'm in an all white environment, I feel more connected to my white side or my white background. So that is totally fine. It's totally okay to kind of have different days where you are vibing more with a particular thing. In fact, that is something that is so special and so beautiful about being mixed race. That's actually my favorite thing about having a multiracial background. It's having a fluid identity. It's being able to go to the Martin Luther King Jr. parade and festival and being able to rep my blackness really hard. And then the next day, I can go to a white coffee shop and drink a French roast and put on my beret, and I feel totally at home, even if I do not pass as white. I know that some people, they tend to identify with their ethnicities based on what they feel they look the most like. But I've noticed this with other people who are more black passing as opposed to people who are more white passing. I've noticed that a lot of people who look more white or they look more non-black, like a Meghan Markle, I've noticed people who look like this, they don't have a problem identifying with their blackness or being pro-black. So why is it that if you look like Ryan Destiny or somebody like that, then suddenly you have a problem or you're not allowed to really identify strongly with a non-black part of your heritage? And I feel like it's because in the black community, your race is what you look like. I've noticed the black community is the only community that I've ever encountered that has that mindset. I've noticed that other ethnicities and stuff, other people groups, where they have more of a multi-generationally mixed population, like in Latin America, a lot of those people groups, they kind of identify by nationality and stuff like that. Nobody's over here oh, well, you're not white passing and so therefore you're not a part of this group. No, that's just in the United States. So a part of embracing your background is really to begin to have more of an international mindset. So not revolving everything around what's happening in Black America, not revolving everything around, what do they think about me on these Black women YouTube channels. That's just one person. Remember that those YouTube channels, they're literally run by one person. Kevin Samuels is just one person. Cynthia G, all these people, that's just, they're one person running a YouTube channel. Are you really going to define your whole entire identity and self-worth and what you feel comfortable with expressing? Are you going to identify that based on some random anonymous person on YouTube that you're never going to meet in real life? They are not living next to you every day. They are not living in your head. So I think we really have to get out of this mindset of letting other people determine our self-perception. I've noticed that some mixed people, they have a problem with that. They have an issue with, if XYZ person doesn't think I'm mixed, then I'm not mixed. If XYZ person doesn't think that I have this phenotype, then I must not have this phenotype. No, you get to decide what your experiences align with the most. So you get to decide what what parts of your family you want to rep the most or whatever. Like I talked in the last episode about how some people, they don't feel comfortable identifying with their white heritage because maybe they felt like somebody got raped or whatever, and they don't want to remember that, or they don't want to tie themselves to that. If you have trauma regarding a particular background, that's okay. But guess what? It's also okay if you have trauma regarding your Black background as well. And I address that a lot on this YouTube channel. So that's why even if people are mixed and they don't call themselves Black, like they don't use that terminology, if they call themselves multiracial or whatever, I actually don't have a problem with that, because different people have had different bad experiences in relation to their ethnic background. And so if a person doesn't feel comfortable identifying with a particular ethnicity, regardless of how they look, if they have not healed that part of themselves yet, or they're not comfortable accepting that part of themselves, I'm not here to beat people over the head with healing. I'm not here to try to tell them, oh no, you need to call yourself XYZ. That's not the point of this channel. But anyway, in this episode, I'm talking about how to embrace your Latin American admixture, your Latin American background. Maybe you have family that is from Mexico or Costa Rica or Nicaragua or one of the Latin American countries. I would say the first step is to begin learning Spanish. Spanish is very important in the Latin culture. I'm not saying that you have to be fluent. You don't have to be fluent. I'm not fluent. But the fact that you're practicing or taking time out of your day to even learn a couple of words or learn a couple of sentences, that is appreciated by a lot of people who have a Latin American background. The fact that you're even trying, the fact that you love and respect that part of yourself enough to want to learn a few phrases or to want to learn how to order your food in Spanish. That's something that's very simple, just learning how to order your food in Spanish. And I used to have this mindset of, okay, how can I learn Spanish and sound like a native speaker? Obviously, I'm from the United States. I was not born in Mexico or anything like that. And so I used to have this mindset of, oh, well, if you weren't born in XYZ country, then like you're never going to fully fit in, so you might as well just say F it. And that's actually not the case. That's like saying if you're a Black person who was not born in Africa, you can't embrace Blackness. It's like, no, you can embrace that part of yourself no matter where you're from, especially if your own parent is that thing, your own grandparent is from that background. So I used to be afraid, like, okay, when it comes to Spanish, if I don't live in the country, then I'm not going to be able to get good at it. That is false. There are so many different strategies for picking up a new language. Like for me, I have the Duolingo app on my phone. I watch telenovelas. I like to go to restaurants and order my food in Spanish. I like to familiarize myself with the different types of food, because remember, when you are making the Latin American foods, you're learning words in Spanish. The names of the dishes are in Spanish, so you're still picking up the language. And luckily, if you live in the United States, there is a very high Latin American population here, so it's very easy for you to get access to that culture. You probably have a Latin American grocery store in your neighborhood, or maybe you have a Mexican restaurant, maybe you have a Venezuelan restaurant in your neighborhood, and you want to go try it out. You can do those things, and that'll help familiarize you with the language. So things like Duolingo. My brother actually did Rosetta Stone when he learned Japanese. We're not Japanese at all, but he did Rosetta Stone, and that really helped him to become pretty fluent in that language. So you can use Rosetta Stone. They also have this thing called Gritty Spanish. Gritty Spanish is good. I don't know if they still have that. You can also follow YouTube channels on here, on this platform, where they teach you different phrases in Spanish. I follow like butterfly Spanish, spring Spanish, and that's a way to just incorporate another language into my daily routine, because my goal was I want to be so familiar with every part of myself to the point where it becomes boring. Like that's how familiar I want to be with each part of my culture. So the way that I like to do it, if you have taken the DNA test and you have a list of all of those different countries that are a part of your DNA, you can make it really fun. You can be like, okay, this month I'm going to learn about Ghana. Next month I'm going to learn about Mexico. Then after that I'm going to learn about Venezuela, or whatever countries you have. I don't know why I randomly said Ghana, but whatever's on your DNA test, you can learn about those particular countries. That is something you can do for your Latin American background. You can learn the history of Mexico. You can learn about the African population in Mexico. You can learn about the native population in Mexico. You can learn the different customs and traditions. Why do they celebrate the Day of the Dead? What is that like? How do they celebrate the Day of the Dead? What is their ritual? What's their routine for when someone passes away? Why do they bring fruits and stuff like that around if a person passes away? Why do they dress up in these different bright colors? Those were some of the things that I started looking into. Another thing that I did to embrace my Latin American side was I started taking in the media. So I started watching the movies. You guys know I watch a lot of telenovelas. I love Reina del Flow. That's one of my favorite TV shows. That's a Colombian show. But my other favorite show was actually a show that stars a black girl. Well, she's actually supposed to be mixed in the show. I don't know if she is in real life, but it is called, I think it's like Siempre Bruja or something like that. My accent's not really that good, but I really love that show because it was very diverse, and she is supposed to be like a multi-generationally mixed black and white girl. So I liked that show. I have been watching like different movies in Spanish. Or another fun thing you can do, and by the way, these are all on Netflix. So I don't have Netflix, but my mom has Netflix, so I like to use her login. Yes, I am one of those ratchet people that uses another person's Netflix login. But I like to go on Netflix and I just type in telenovela, or I type in Mexico, and then I see what shows I want to watch. I also started watching Taco Chronicles because that show talks about the food, like Latin American food. It talks about the history of the food and like where it comes from and like why do they make it that way. And then you can play it in Spanish. So the good thing about Netflix is that pretty much any show, even an English speaking show, you can make the audio in Spanish, and then you can have English subtitles if you need to, or you can have Spanish subtitles depending on your level of Spanish. And if you've already watched that show before and you're already familiar with the storyline, rewatch it again in Spanish. Learn some of your favorite songs, learn like a Spanish translation of them. I love to do this with Christmas music. There are lots of like Spanish translations or kind of like a Spanish version of Christmas songs. So you can like make a playlist that has all of the different artists on there. You also can learn the icons that come from that ethnicity. So obviously, like for me, I watched the Netflix series that was on Selena. You can also watch documentaries about different icons from your Latin American country. Like maybe if you're Venezuelan, are there any people from Venezuela that you can learn about? Or are there people throughout history who have really affected that country, whether it's in a positive or negative way? Can you learn about those people? Those are a few of the ways that I started to really embrace my Latin heritage. And it got really fun as far as watching like the telenovelas and all of the movies and stuff in Spanish. It actually got fun because the movies are like entertaining, they're funny. So it's funny to hear stuff in Spanish. And I actually started picking up a couple of words in Portuguese too, because I didn't realize that in the Spanish language, they have slang words that are actually Portuguese words. So I would have never known that had I not started actually watching the TV shows and stuff. Another thing that you want to remember is that there are different dialects in Spanish. So you have to pick which dialect you want to learn and like which slang you want to learn. So when I say there's a different dialect, what I mean is the English that we speak in the United States on the West Coast, it sounds different than people who are from the East Coast, and they sound different than people who are from the South, and they sound different than people who are from Australia, and Australians sound different than people who are from Britain, and people from Britain sound different from those who are from New Zealand. All of those things, like all of those are the English language, but different dialects, meaning you have a different accent. The slang is different. Maybe even the sentence structure is different. So Spanish is like that as well. So depending on what country your family is from, you can speak in that dialect, or you can learn your Spanish with that slang or with that accent or whatever. So when I first started really getting into Spanish, I kind of naturally gravitated towards the Caribbean Spanish and like the Caribbean Spanish culture, kind of like Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, and Cubans, because I felt like those people looked more like me. So I naturally started gravitating towards that. And then when I was speaking Spanish, people were like, "Oh, are you Puerto Rican?" And it was because the accent I was using when I was speaking Spanish was more similar to people from Puerto Rico. So there's a different pronunciation Depending on what country you're from, there are different slang words and stuff. So you get to decide. I mean, I would recommend doing it based on the country your family is from, but you also can decide, okay, what kind of slang do I want to use? Which dialect do I want to learn? And then you can look up TV shows from that country. Most of the novelas, the telenovelas that I watch, they are obviously Colombian because that is where most of the popular telenovelas are based. But those are a couple of fun ways that I have really embraced that side of myself. Another way that I've embraced that part of myself is by participating in the culture. So just like how you would participate in Black culture, you know how they actually call it the culture. So in African American culture, they celebrate things like Juneteenth and Martin Luther King Day, none of which I celebrated growing up, by the way. I didn't even view it as a big deal at all until I became an adult, and I realized, oh wait, in the African American community they actually do stuff. Like they might go to a parade, or they might, make a special meal or have like a little cookout or something. So just like you would do that with African American culture, you can do the same thing with your Latin culture. So in the United States, Hispanic Heritage Month is in September. I know it's not like September 1st. It's at some point in September. I think it's like September 15th through October 15th or something like that. But you can, for Hispanic Heritage Month, if you want, you can like do something different every single day that represents that part of your culture. And another thing that you can do to embrace your Latin side, something that I did, was I started purchasing small items from Mexico, or from that background. So for those of you who are in the Patreon and the Discord, you saw me show a picture of my journal, and it was a picture of Frida Kahlo. I also have a couple of like kind of tribal looking necklaces and little bracelets and things like that. And these are very easy things to get. Like if you ever go on a vacation, actually that leads me to my next point, is traveling to that place. But it's really easy to get small jewelry pieces that represent that side of your culture or your heritage. I will say, if you're going to wear paraphernalia from that country, like, or if you're going to wear a t-shirt that says Latina AF or something, just be ready for people to speak to you in Spanish. So that's why it's fun for you to practice your Spanish, and then you can wear a shirt or something, and people are going to walk up to you. They might start talking to you, or they might start asking you questions like, oh, are you from Mexico? And by the way, if you are Mexican, if that's a part of your background, make sure you know the different states in Mexico. A lot of people don't know that Mexico is not just one big blob of land. Like there are different states. Just like how there are states in the US, you have California, you have New York, there's Texas, Oregon, Idaho. There are different states in Mexico as well. So you may want to learn all of the different states, and you want to learn like what makes that particular state popular. And by the way, if you're from a smaller country, I would say definitely learning about your country, learning about the history of your country. Isn't that beautiful? That's your country. That's not just the people who are from there. No, that's your country too. Just like how if you're African American, Ghana is your country. But guess what? If you have a Latin American background, Nicaragua or Mexico, Costa Rica, that's your country too. So you want to learn the flag from that country, and then you can start incorporating those colors into your wardrobe. That's a fun way to kind of like embrace that part of your heritage in a very subtle way, just to remind yourself, oh, hey, like, yeah, that's a part of my background. And then one of my favorite things when it comes to embracing the Latin American side in particular, Latin American food, that's pretty much my favorite food. If I had to choose one like type of food to eat for the rest of my life, it would probably be Latin American food, because I love like all of the different fresh vegetables and stuff. But you want to start eating the food more, or if you're cheap like me, you can start making the food at home. Like I love going to the store and getting like the agua frescas and stuff like that and trying all the different ones. By the way, if you are Latin American and you have not tried the different agua frescas that you can get pretty much anywhere, any authentic Mexican restaurant or store, they're going to have them. They're going to have piña, they're going to have jamaica, they're going to have all of them. So you want to learn about the different agua frescas and like which one is your favorite. So you can learn what you like and what you don't like. Not only is that going to help you get to know your culture, but also like that's your country, right? So you don't want to be like too Americanized to the point where it's like you don't even know all of the different Mexican foods, or you don't know all of the different Venezuelan foods. You want to be familiar with all of the different dishes because that's your country. I've noticed that a part of the reason why some people don't relate to certain parts of their mix, it's because they've never tried. They've never invested the time to get to know that part of themselves. They've never invested the time to learn about their country of origin. They've never invested the time to meet people from their country of origin. Oh, another thing that I did, by the way, when it came to embracing my Latin American heritage in particular, was I started joining groups online. So I am somewhat of a Reddit person. I have like a spam Reddit account because I love going on there. It's just so funny. But they have Latin American groups on there. They have groups for like Mexico or Costa Rica or whatever place you're from, wherever your background is from, Cuba. They have different Reddit groups on there. So that will help you to keep up with what's going on in that country. But also, they have Spanish speaking Reddit groups for people who are learning Spanish. I also recommend joining the mixed race Reddit group. So, on the mixed race Reddit group, first of all, you don't have to deal with quite as much ignorance as you would deal with like in the African American community or in a monoracial community because everybody there is mixed race for the most part. So you can see other people posting about how they are embracing their mixed heritage and like what they're doing because I know that if you were not raised with that culture, you could feel in the beginning, you might feel like a fraud, like, oh, I wasn't raised with this, like I'm not fluent in Spanish, I don't feel like I fit in. That's totally normal for you to feel like that. Everybody feels like a fraud when they first try something new. Everybody feels like they don't fit in if it's their first time ever doing something. So I definitely recommend joining the Reddit groups. Another thing that I did to embrace my Latin side was I don't remember if I went to a parade, but I think I did go to some sort of like festival. So if your city has any festivals that celebrate that heritage or that celebrate that country, or maybe there is an Independence Day or a special day in that country or a special celebration that has to do with your Latin American side, go to the celebration. Maybe there's a new grand opening of like a Mexican restaurant in your neighborhood. Go to that Mexican restaurant. What you can also do, if you're an extrovert, you can actually talk to people in the store or in the restaurant. You can do either English or Spanish, but I've done this before when I was like really on my kick, like embracing it. You can talk to a person and say, oh yeah, my grandma is from Cuba or my grandma is from XYZ country. And you can talk to a person who is actually a part of that background and you can see how they're going to respond. They're going to be like, oh, wow, that's cool. Don't worry. They're not going to say, oh my God, no, they're not. Oh, what? They're not like going to give you this gaslighting answer like how you would encounter jealous people. Usually only jealous people give you that kind of reaction. Like, no, you're not. You don't really count. Shut up. You think you're better than me. You're trying to separate yourself from me. So let me put you in your place. That's the only reason that people would give you that reaction of, no, you're not really XYZ. But if you just go into like a Mexican grocery store or some sort of Latin American grocery store, you can just talk to the person at the store. Just, hey, how are you today? Practice interacting with people from that background. It's going to help you to feel a lot more comfortable. Another really fun thing that I did with my Latin American background that I'm so glad that I did, this was life changing, was trying out new products from that country or that are geared towards people of that background. So at first, you know how when it comes to hair products, I've had a complex about hair products because in the Black community, hair is such a big deal. But I used to be under the assumption that like, oh, one drop rule when it comes to Black hair products, basically. So no matter how little amount of blackness you have to only use Black hair products. You cannot veer off of that because Black hair is very distinct and all of the other products are not going to work. They're going to break off your hair. You're going to be bald headed. Your hair is going to be dry if you use any products that are not geared towards basically African 4C hair. One of the most fun things that I ever did that I love doing still to this day was going to the Latin American grocery stores. Yes, that's right. Just start off in the grocery store. Go and walk down their beauty aisle. It's very interesting. I love going to foreign grocery stores and going through their beauty aisle. I have found so many amazing things. Just wait until I do my episode on the Asian background. But anyway, in the Latin American grocery store, that was where I discovered all of these incredible hair products. All of my holy grail hair products that are actually cheap are the Hispanic hair products. Silicone mix, crece pelo, all of these different shampoos and conditioners that you will find at Mexican grocery stores. You never know. Some of them might really work on you. I also use some of their soaps and stuff, but I can't remember the names of their soaps. If I find them, then I will let you guys know, or I'll make another episode where I talk about them. But I got a lot of like different rose flavored bath oils and stuff from the Latin American stores. And another thing that I did was not only did I go to the beauty aisle in the grocery store, but I actually, whenever I went to the black beauty supply, I started searching for these Latin American brands. And I was like, oh, I wonder if they have silicone mix at the beauty supply. Turns out they did. So the black beauty supply stores, first of all, they're not even owned by black people most of the time. They're owned by usually some Asian person or something. So a lot of the beauty supply stores actually have a whole bunch of Latin American beauty products. Like I love getting all of my silicone. I tried every single silicone mix brand. I've also tried like the emergency hair treatment. And once I started going to the beauty supply stores, I started specifically looking for anything that was in Spanish. So if it had Spanish on the label, or if it was some sort of brand that I was kind of familiar with that I had seen a lot in the Latin American stores, I would just take it right off the shelf and I would just try it out. And that has caused me to not only grow my hair, but also I found so many Holy Grail products. So the next thing is to actually go to your home country. Even if you don't know any of your family members or whatever, because some people are like, oh, I don't have any family that like lives there that I know of. Okay, that doesn't mean you're banned from going to that country. People travel to different countries all the time. You can plan your next vacation there because a lot of these places, depending on where you go, I guess, and depending on where you live in the US, sometimes the flights can be pretty cheap. So you can go on a trip, maybe with your parent, or you can just go on a solo trip. And if you have the luxury of living in a state, for example, let's say you are Mexican and you live in one of the states that is like adjacent to Mexico in the United States, did you know that a lot of times you can do different things where you can like walk across the border or you can like take a bus that goes directly to the border, depending on what state you're in. They have some tourist attractions that are like border towns. So you can still go to the border towns and then guess what? You got to go to your country. But another thing that I did was whenever I would travel to these Latin American places, like when I would go to Mexico, I went with my family. Whenever I would go with my family, we would specifically go to the different stores and stuff, and I would specifically look for beauty products that I know that I can't find in the United States. And I tried so many incredible brands that were very cheap because I got them in Mexico, and it works so well for my hair. So don't discount yourself or be like, oh, because I don't have the average features of a person from XYZ country, that means I can't use their hair products. That means I can't use their beauty products. No, this is not the fashion police. This is not the freaking racist beauty police. You can use whatever hair products you want. You can try whatever you want. You can try whatever products or like leave-in conditioners and stuff that you want to. So that was one of my favorite things about embracing the Latin American side because the Latin American hair stuff actually works better on my hair than a lot of the African American products. A lot of the African American hair products are actually too heavy for my hair. So it makes it stiff. It makes it kind of like, it leaves like this white cast over my hair because I have fine hair. So it's very easy for my hair to get buildup. But it has been really fun finding different products from Mexico and seeing what I wanted to try or different products that are kind of geared towards Latin American people and Latin American hair and just trying them out. Another thing that you can try, or something that I also did to embrace my Latin side, was I did dance classes. So if you are a member of a gym that offers different dance classes, like salsa classes or Zumba, whatever it is that has the style of dance from your country, you can take those classes, or you can specifically look in your city and see like, okay, do they have salsa? Do they have bachata? Do they have like merengue? Do they have all of these Latin style dances that I can learn? So even if it's something like cheap or free where it's not, you're obviously not going to be the next like J-Lo or something, that's okay because you're still familiarizing yourself with your own culture. It's just like how in the Black culture, generally speaking, you kind of learn like the electric slide or like, I don't know, cha-cha slide. Does that count? But you learn like the different dances that are associated with that ethnicity, right? So the same thing goes for the Latin American side. They have different dances that are affiliated with each country, so you can learn those dances. Another thing that I did was I started listening to music from Latin American artists. So I'm talking American, not like Bad Bunny or whoever, but even people like Selena Gomez. I'm not a huge fan of Selena Gomez, but you can listen to artists who have that same background, like Selena. You can listen to just anyone with that background or anyone whose family is from that same country, whether that person is American and English speaking or whether they are actually from another country. You can begin to incorporate those songs into your playlists. And then let's say you have Latin American people at your job. If you hear a Latin American person playing a song that you have in your playlist, you can start singing along with it. And like, there you go. You're automatically kind of fitting in right there. My favorite Latin American actress is Christina Milian. If you guys haven't noticed, in pretty much all of her movies, she always represents her Latin heritage, which I love. So you can watch some movies that have Christina Milian in them or some other Latin American actresses and stuff, and that will help to familiarize you with that culture. Also, I have gone out of my way to like, so you know how they have flea markets and stuff in your neighborhood, or like, I don't like calling it a flea market, but basically where a bunch of vendors set up tables and they sell stuff. So like jewelry, juices, lotions, body butters, whatever. Anytime I have gone to one of those, if I see any sort of Latin American owned business, I will do my best to purchase something from there. So even if they're selling, like I remember one time I went to this flea market thing and there was a girl there. She was like a white passing Mexican girl or whatever, but she was selling cookies and the cookies were like llamas and cactuses and they were basically trying to represent the Latin American culture, but via these cute little cookies. So I went there and I just bought a couple of cookies. And yes, that genuinely did make me feel like I was embracing that part of myself because I was supporting a girl who also has the same type of background as me. And you're also getting a piece of the culture as well because the images on the cookies are kind of representing that background. Another thing that I really did to go out of my way with the Latin side was I actually did go and get some nopales. So that is cactus. You can put it as like a topping on something. I was not very good at making it. It was like kind of slimy when I made it. It didn't really taste that good. But the fact that I went out of my way and actually put my money where my mouth is, and I was trying to like really get deeply immersed in that part of myself and like get deeply familiar with all of the different dishes and stuff like that, that was helping me to feel more like I am a part of the culture. And by the way, I thought that I loved Mexican food before. I thought that I loved all of the different Latin American foods before. I never realized how much I really do like all of the foods. Like I will eat all of it, like the tamales, the chorizo, the like tacos, the different beans. I am obsessed with beans. I know that a lot of people in the United States, they kind of talk crap about beans. They say that beans like make you fart and stuff, but I don't care. Like for me, it has never done anything bad to my stomach. I can live off of beans. So I love like the black beans. I've made the Cuban beans before. I'm not even Cuban, but I started to branch out and figure out things about other Latin American countries and like different recipes that I want to try. So it's kind of like how if you're African American, you may find yourself also being familiar with a little bit of Nigerian culture, a little bit of Caribbean culture, a little bit of like Jamaican culture and stuff, even if that's not your background, but because you know of other Black people from those places, then you might find yourself just kind of naturally being familiar with it, like Jamaican black castor oil. Oh yeah, that's in my bathroom right now. Oh, like jollof rice. I know what that is. I've had that before. I'm not Nigerian. But because some of the people in that place look like you, or they can relate to you, or they kind of look like some of your family members, you naturally start taking in that culture. That's how I started to feel about Latin American culture. So that's why I found myself kind of branching out and making like the Cuban beans or, just trying other stuff like the arepas. That is more of a Colombian or Venezuelan dish. Like I'm not Colombian, but I just started to gradually expand. And that is what makes you more multicultural over time. You become more familiar with certain things. And by the way, side note, I know that not all Latin countries speak Spanish. I know that there are other languages spoken in some of the countries. So, whatever language is spoken in your country or whatever language you feel the highest desire to learn, try to learn that language. And also try to take a trip to that country so that you can see it with your own eyes. You know, you're walking on the same land that your ancestors and family members used to walk on. Anyway, this was a really fun video to make. What do you ladies think? How did you embrace your Latin side? Have you practiced Spanish? How do you practice your Spanish? Because I try to practice mine multiple different ways. So yes, I have the basic stuff like the Duolingo app, but I also listen to the music every single day. By the way, I have like a 15-minute limit where it's like, okay, I have to listen to songs in Spanish for at least 15 minutes a day, and that is so I don't lose it. But I do that. I like to watch telenovelas all the time. Anytime I have a flight somewhere, if it's like going to be a 4-hour flight, I automatically go on Netflix and I download all of the telenovelas. Another thing I forgot to add when it comes to embracing my Latin American background is I actually started subscribing to influencers who are Latin American. So, you know how you can watch like hair channels, makeup channels, beauty channels? I started subscribing to beauty channels that are created by Spanish speaking Latin American girls. And I tried to pick out girls who have some African in their phenotype. I will put up pictures of them if I can find them. But the way I did that was I just went onto the YouTube search bar and I just typed in a word in Spanish or a phrase in Spanish. Like I just typed in like maquillaje, which is makeup in Spanish, or I typed in pelo negro or some sort of phrase that is in Spanish so that the results that come up on the search bar are all Spanish speaking videos. And then I started watching these videos every day, just playing them in the background. And I'm actually watching people from a Latin American country and they have a similar hair texture to me. I tried to click on girls that had similar hair textures, similar skin tone, similar phenotype in some way. And that was another way that I gradually started to really immerse myself into the Latin culture. And every day you're not going to feel the same connection with that culture that you did yesterday. That's okay. It's the same with blackness, right? Sometimes with my blackness, I feel very like pro-black. Like this weekend when I go to the Martin Luther King Festival, I'm going to feel very pro-black. I'm going to feel very African and like very blackety black. Hopefully someone starts playing the electric slide or something and then I will just be living my best life. Hopefully I can also get some soul food. That would be amazing. But it's like some days you connect more with that culture and other days you feel kind of like bored with it. And that's where being mixed is such a beautiful thing because the next day you could literally say, okay, I want to embrace my Italian admixture. Like I have a very small amount of Italian in my bloodline or whatever. The other quote unquote white admixtures, the bigger ones, are not Italian. But guess what? If I want to pick out my small amount of Italian admixture tomorrow and I feel like making some Italian sausages, I'm going to. That is a beautiful part about being mixed. Things have a different meaning to you. So for someone else, they're just eating spaghetti. They're just eating tortillas. They're just eating tacos. But to you, you are engaging in the culture and the background of your actual ancestors and your actual family members. Another thing you can do for your Latin American background is if you have any family members who, like maybe you have pictures of them and stuff, and especially if they're like deceased, you can keep the pictures of those family members and you can celebrate those people or celebrate their memory on the Day of the Dead if you feel comfortable. If you don't feel comfortable with that, you don't have to. But that is something you can do if you're one of those spiritual types of people or you want to kind of experiment with that side of yourself. Anyway, what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comments section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.